Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Josh David, the national chairman and organizer for the Denver chapter of Liberty on the Rocks. Well, Josh, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Brandon, thanks for having me. Always good to talk to you.
Awesome. Appreciate that, sir. Well, tell everybody who you are. Josh, who are you?
So that's the thing I've been trying to find out. I've been going down this whole privacy route and changing my name a little bit. But yeah, so I'm going by Josh David now. I'm a long-term libertarian activist. I consider myself an anarcho-capitalist. I got very interested in libertarianism in college. I went to a very left-wing college and would argue with my professors all the time. Really got into it by following Ron Paul. Also read some Ayn Rand back in the day. And then I've just basically dedicated my interests to all things liberty as much as possible. So a lot of libertarian reading. I stay up in the news, always look at everything from a libertarian perspective, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Very cool, very cool. I think a lot of people can relate, to Ron Paul and Ayn Rand and some of these other authors that have come out over the years. But what was it that really drew you in? Was there a single book or a documentary or YouTube or a podcast or anything that really kind of brought you into the liberty community?
So it's kind of a weird story, actually. When I was 21, I worked at a supplement shop. It's called Vitamin World, and I would have all these interesting conversations with people who came in. And I remember there's three interesting conversations in particular. And one guy came in. We were just chatting about politics and stuff, and he told me about Al Qaeda and that the U.S. government had funded Al Qaeda and the Taliban and that sort of thing. You know, I'm 21 at the time. I was like, no, that can't be true. That's nonsense. And then I went and looked it up. I was like, oh my god, it's true. That's wild. Like, because I was in, I think, what, middle school when 9/11 happened, and all the Iraq War stuff. I was in high school when all that happened, and in my mind, it was just so obvious what had happened. So kind of realizing that I'd been lied to about that was kind of a crazy thing to me at the time. And then we had this other guy who would come in. He was kind of a hippie. I remember he was building a car that could run on water, and he told me all about Ron Paul. He gave me the little pamphlet for Ron Paul, and when I read through it, the thing on there that really stuck out to me at the time was he didn't want to regulate the internet, and I loved the internet. I'd really discovered, things like internet piracy. I was big on that. I was starting to do a little side business fixing computers, and the only way that I could do that was basically by getting free software. So that was sort of a big issue to me at the time. So like, okay, this guy doesn't want to regulate the internet. That seems cool. And then I started seeing Ron Paul signs everywhere. I remember there was this big overpass I would drive under, which was like two dirt hills on the side, and up above, I have no idea how they got it up there. It was like 100 feet up. There was a Ron Paul sign, and I would like drive under this Ron Paul sign every day to go into town. And again, it's like two big dirt hills. Somehow somebody strung a piece of string up there and had a Ron Paul sign. And so I would just see those everywhere. And I started watching a bunch of Ron Paul videos, reading some of his books, and just really realizing how lied to I had been about everything in school. So Ron Paul was my gateway drug. And then I
Very
guess
cool.
from there I graduated. I read Spooner, and that blew my mind too. Constitution of No Authority, and then I was pretty much an anarchist after that, and it made all of my political science classes in college very difficult.
That I can understand for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
Ron Paul woke a lot of people up, I think, because here's somebody who's a congressman, right? He's kind of an older gentleman, a congressman, well spoken. He's not the hippie from the supplement store. He doesn't present himself that way, right? He's not some conspiracy theorist either. He's a reasonable, intelligent person who has a career in Congress. I mean, he's been there for a long time. So when he came around and started saying these things about US foreign policy and how the government's ripping us off with the Federal Reserve and all the problems associated with the government. Here's like finally, here's somebody who's going to kind of be contrary to this mainstream narrative that we hear all the time. And I mean, it was so refreshing. But I think
Yeah.
because kind of who Ron Paul was, he was able to present that message a lot better than really anybody since then.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if anyone, I mean, maybe someone like Dave Smith is kind of this up and coming guy right now who's got that sort of similar attention, but doesn't have the mainstream establishment credentials that Ron Paul had. So, we got a few other good guys. Thomas Massey, Justin Amash was in there who were really good. But yeah, I feel like Ron Paul, in a lot of ways, was just kind of right place, right time. He happened to be this really intelligent guy, super principled. And I remember watching the debates back then. I remember Mitt Romney would say something like, "We need to create a job creating machine." Like that doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? And then Ron Paul would go out there in school, or like the Giuliani moment, or when he would go out there with Rick Santorum, that you would quickly realize, as I was young and didn't know a ton, but it was pretty obvious to me even at the time that these other guys had no idea what they're talking about. And Ron Paul just knew something about everything. So yeah, it was really cool to see.
Yeah, very cool. Well, how did you get involved with Liberty on the Rocks? How did you hear about it? How did you find out about Liberty on the Rocks?
Yeah, so I went to college in Hawaii. My wife and I decided to leave Hawaii as soon as we graduated. So we left in May 2014, and we ended up moving to Denver. So when we first got to Denver, we didn't know anyone. We had no friends, nothing, but we had a really good sort of like agorist libertarian crew in Hawaii and Honolulu. And we were trying to kind of replicate that. So I actually just posted on Reddit. I think it was the anarcho-capitalism subreddit. Just, hey, are there any libertarian meetups around? And so Justin Longo responded to me. He's like, yeah, there's a really cool meetup. It's called Liberty on the Rocks. I run it. You should come check it out. So we went 2 weeks later to our first event, and we went to pretty much every single event after that. We ended up becoming good friends with Justin Longo and Amanda Mill, who were running Liberty on the Rocks at the time, as well as a bunch of other people there. And then after a couple of years, Justin and Amanda, they basically wanted to retire to have kids. And they were just going to end it. And my wife and I started talking to them. My wife started helping out first, and then, but she didn't like getting up on the mic. So I would get up on the mic to kind of host the meetings and make my dumb jokes and all that. And so we were going back and forth. It was me and Justin doing it for about a year or two, and then he got to the point that he was just done. He wanted to have kids and move on from it. So my wife and I took it over completely. And so that would been, I think, mid 2018, I think. And so then we've been running it ever since then. So about 6 years, where it's been almost entirely me and my wife, and she helps out when she can. But I do about 85% of it.
Nice, very cool. Well, it is Denver's premier Liberty meetup. It's a great place to meet people, to make friends. Definitely found the right group, the right tribe. Getting on Reddit there, lucky Reddit moment to be able to
Yeah.
find Justin especially and start attending the meetups. But for people who don't know, what is Liberty on the Rocks? Kind of give us that overview.
Yeah, so Liberty on the Rocks, we're technically a 501c3 nonprofit organization with our primary goal is to educate people in fun, interactive environments. So one of the things that Justin and Amanda, and also there was another guy who founded it with them, Joe Weaver, but he moved. I don't know him particularly well, but the three of them, they really got together and they wanted to have a fun, interesting environment. So this would have been 2009. They were all hyped on Ron Paul and this movement, but they felt like everybody else in the movement were these old kind of conservative people who weren't really, they didn't have the young energy that they wanted, and they were all very conservative. They wanted to meet young people, they wanted to talk about these ideas, they saw how exciting it was, and they wanted to do it in a fun way that wasn't just about like political activism, right? They didn't want to be going to Republican or Libertarian Party meetings, just because it doesn't quite have the same vibe. So they actually copied another group. It was a left-wing group, I believe it was called Drinking Liberally. They went to a meetup there and they realized, hey, let's do this exact same thing, except let's make it libertarian. So they started that. They met, I forget which bar they met at originally. Eventually that moved over to Chopper Sports Bar and Grill. They were there for about, well, I guess until 2020 happened. And then we left Choppers. We've been at the Independence Institute ever since then. But yeah, so every one of our events, we try to do a speaker. We do a wide range of issues. The issues tend to be whatever I think is interesting and related to liberty. So, as you know, you've been to a lot of them. We do a wide range of topics. Our last talk that we did was last night. We talked about vaccines. That was a bit of a controversial topic, a little bit less so than it would have been had we done it 5 years ago. We've done a few things on sort of crypto anarchy in the last few months. We had to talk about Julian Assange. We talked about the network state. I did a talk on crypto anarchy and the cypherpunks. We had Charlie Robinson come in for the Macroaggressions podcast. You've done several presentations, as you know, obviously. So you do a legislative update for us every year, and then you've done a couple of other talks as well. So yeah, wide range. Anything that seems interesting. Sometimes we get super philosophical. We'll do some local politics, national politics. We've done a bunch of Bitcoin meetups. We did 2 debates last year. We did a Bitcoin versus wider crypto debate, and then we also did a presidential debate for the Libertarian Party. That was kind of fun. We had Josh Smith and Chase Oliver debated. That was about a year ago that we did that one. So the main goal is just to bring people together in a fun environment, help them learn something and get them inspired to do something for liberty, but also make that separate from electoral politics. As a 501c3, we can't endorse candidates or parties. And that's just what I want because I've never been a big activist on that side.
Yeah, I think one of the most fun things with Liberty on the Rocks is all the different topics that are covered. It's fun
Yeah.
because, one night they're talking, you got a speaker about Bitcoin, then it's about somebody else 3D printing firearms, and somebody's talking about
Yep.
some philosophical issue that I've never necessarily considered, maybe like ethical veganism or something.
It's it's been a while since we've done the veganism one. I'm going to give the rebuttal to the veganism one at some point, but we've done I think two or three on veganism actually, veganism slash vegetarianism.
Or Bitcoin and beef, or
Hmm.
some of that stuff. Those are some awesome talks. But it's
Yeah,
so neat, because there's always something new, something fresh, and it's new ideas, and you gain some different experiences just going there. And it's kind of fun too because the speakers kind of dictate who some of the crowd is. So you go to one and then you get a different type of crowd than you will a couple weeks later for a
yeah,
different event. So it's kind of
yeah,
neat. It's a kind of great way to for people just to get mixed up, and like a mixer where you're like meeting new people for the first time. You kind of share this at least a tenuous kind of agreement on liberty in general, and then sometimes you find people that you're like, oh my gosh, this is my tribe. This is like, where have you been? This is like a clone of me. it's
right,
it's so
right.
fun to go to these meetups.
Yeah, it's where I've met most of my friends. That's where we met. I think back when you spoke in 2018, it was when we met. But almost all of my friends I met through Liberty on the Rocks or through like a person who I met at Liberty on the Rocks. We've kept in touch with a lot of people, and every single event that we have, I meet at least one new person, and usually they're really cool and pretty interesting. We do attract some interesting folks from time to time, some interesting personalities, but that's always fun too. So.
Have there been any speakers or events that have really stood out, like as kind of some of your favorites or some of the highlights over the years?
Mm. Um, there's so many. One of my favorite ones was we had Charlie Robinson last December. We just had a really good turnout for that one. It was a really good energy. Charlie Robinson's such a good speaker, and he's kind of a big name. That was a lot of fun. We had over 60 people for that one, so I really enjoyed that one. The talks I've done, have been pretty fun. I did a crazy conspiracy talk on Jeffrey Epstein when that was big news. I did my crypto anarchy talk. I really enjoyed those. Um, so we have, I'd say, two people who are probably my go-to regular speakers, which would be you, as you know, since you're our next talk, since our next speaker had to bail out, unfortunately. And then we got Matthias von Gutenberg, who's an interesting character. He's not super well known, but he's very knowledgeable on a lot of different topics. So we actually had a bit of an argument at one point. He really wanted to talk about Bitcoin, and I pretty much wouldn't let him because he's an expert on all these other things. Like, no, I don't have anyone else that can give super in-depth talks on Austrian economics, and I have 50 people who can give in-depth talks on Bitcoin. So having some people like that in the community is always really cool, where you have someone who really knows a lot about like one particular talk. So we had Amanda Mill last night. She's a hardcore vaccine, I mean, effectively an anti-vaxxer, but she's really done the research. She knows what she believes, and she's got the receipts to back up her opinions. So all the talks have been great. Oh, okay, not all of them. We've had a few that weren't great, but we've had a lot of really fun ones. Learned a ton, and we've had some big names from time to time.
Nice, very cool. I think when you were talking about Mateus and you said he's very knowledgeable, that's something that kind
Mm-hmm.
of resonated in terms of the people I've met there. It seems like Liberty on the Rocks attracts very intelligent people, very well educated people on some level, maybe not book smart, but street smart or world smart, that they've experienced some incredible things. So it
Yeah,
definitely seems to attract like that kind of intelligent person who wants to discuss philosophy, who wants to talk about economics, who wants to like explore some new ideas, maybe get out of their comfort zone a little bit.
yeah, I definitely think so. That's certainly been my experience, and that's why we pretty much never missed a meeting after we first went back in 2014. So
Oh wow, that's awesome.
yeah,
So, how did you survive COVID? Because you say this has been going on for a long time, right?
yeah,
You've been doing this for quite many years now, but COVID shut down the world. Unfortunately, we saw these authoritarian edicts from our governor and the health department kind of shut down all these businesses. And so, what did Liberty on the Rocks do to
yeah.
survive?
Yeah, so obviously that was tough for us, tough for everyone. So I think our last meeting, we were at Chopper's Sports Bar and Grill. We had our own dedicated room there. We really liked the space. I think it was, early March. We did a talk. We had another one scheduled for, it would have been the third Wednesday since we meet on the first and third Wednesdays of every month. So third Wednesday would have been our next talk. Obviously, COVID got shut down the whole world, and we couldn't go back, right? So I emailed our vendor, and they wouldn't respond to us. So there was basically no option to go back there. And everyone was so afraid at the time, they didn't know what we were going to do. So our first event, we did one event live. I believe that was Justin Longo, actually. He presented on intellectual property and property rights, which was a talk I was really excited for. I'd been hassling him for about 2 years to give that talk. And then we ended up, not able to do it. So we decided to do it live. So we did that one event live. And it was a lot of fun, something unique. We streamed it out of my house. him and his wife came over and we just streamed it in my living room. But I did realize quickly that the value for me, for our organization, is in-person meetups. So I've had a lot of people request to do live streams and stuff. I'm just not interested in that. It's about being with other people in real life, right? It's not about there's a million live streams you can watch. I That's just not what I want to do. It's not what we do. So, but that made it difficult since we couldn't go back to the bar. They didn't respond to me for a good 6 months. So for the next 6 months, what we did is we really expanded our Telegram group that we had, and so a lot of people could just talk in there, and we had a lot of conversations about what was going on, and everyone was sharing information. We gave it about a month until we realized, yeah, this whole thing is bullshit. That's what we thought it was. We gave it a month to be safe, and then we started meeting in backyards. So we basically just started doing barbecues. I think we were only doing them once a month. So we had different members volunteer their backyards, and so about once a month for the next 6 months, we would have a Liberty on the Rocks barbecue. We went down to the park at one point. We got a lot of angry yells when we were at that park. We got a few middle fingers at us. I don't know if you remember that. You were there for that one. But some people got mad. So we did that for about 6 months, and then we went back to Choppers for 2 events. They finally responded to me, but that was kind of a nightmare. We had to wear masks anytime we weren't standing. And then we were capped at 34 people. And then we were also capped essentially because we had to spend at least $500 every meetup, or they would charge us. They would charge us the difference. But that was very difficult when we were capped at 34 people. A lot of people didn't even want to come because of either they could have been scared of COVID or they had to wear a mask. And then we had that minimum. And then after that, we got shut down again. So we couldn't even do that. So we did 2 events back at Choppers, and then we got shut down for the next 2 months. That would have been December 2021 through January. And so then after that, I reached out to the Independence Institute, where we had done a few special events. It's where Justin Longo, the founder, used to work, and they were more than happy to have us. They gave us this great meeting space, this free room, and they had no mask policy. They did not care. They didn't check anything, didn't tell us anything. But no, do whatever you want. So, we've been meeting there ever since. That's been, I guess, 3.5 years now that we've been at Independence Institute. And of course, the downside is, you're not at a bar. You can't order drinks. You can't order food. But the pro side is we bring drinks. We give out free drinks to everyone. Our donations are way up. We control the music. We control the environment. We have a projector screen now so people can do more in-depth presentations. Whereas before we were just at a bar, and every once in a while we would use the TV. But it's kind of a weird vibe to do this presentation when everyone's at a bar. So, there's mixed feelings about it. I polled our audience a few times, and everyone prefers Independence Institute. Not everyone. The majority prefers it. There are a few people who would like to go back to the bar, and there was, some benefits lost for sure. But ultimately, that was it. We just had to keep adapting.
Yeah, adapt or die, right? Like you got to
Yep.
do what you got to do. And yeah, I mean, Colorado's very thankful. I think the Colorado Liberty community, by that is what I mean, thankful for the Independence Institute and their meeting space there because they allow, obviously, Liberty on the Rocks. The Libertarian Party of Colorado has their board meetings there. Colorado
Yep.
Union of Taxpayers. I mean, the list goes on and on of different like pro-liberty organizations that are not even they're not connected whatsoever can use
Yep.
this space just right in the heart of Denver. I mean, a mile from the Gold Dome that bad place down there. So
Yep.
really great there. So Josh, Denver Liberty on the Rocks is the first chapter. You say it's the best chapter. How many chapters are there across the world?
So at our peak, I think we had 34 chapters. So 34 total. I don't know exactly how active they all were. Now, a lot of these, would kind of pop up and only run for a few months and disappear, create a Facebook, disappear. And we're a pretty decentralized organization, so we don't keep super close tabs on all these other organizations. We had a really big chapter in LA that ran for a long time. There was a big one in Tallahassee that ran for a long time. Actually, the guy from Tallahassee lives in Wyoming. I've been trying to see if he wants to start one up there. But at the moment, we're a little smaller than we were at our peak. We have about 5 active chapters. So there's one in Australia, of all places, chapter in Australia. And then there's one in Philadelphia that's still active that runs pretty regularly. And then one in Nashville. That one's been running since I think like 2011. That's Ken over there. He's been doing that just once a month. And you can find all this information on our website, libertyontherocks.org/chapters. And then, as you know, we now have 3 chapters in Colorado. So we used to have a chapter in the Flatirons chapter that ended in 2019. That was Mike Shelton. He couldn't do it anymore. And so you started a chapter, 2 years ago now? Is that what it is?
It's somewhere around then, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Almost 2 years, I think. You started the NOCO chapter. So you guys are kind of bouncing around all in that northern Colorado area. And you guys are not doing speakers. You're just sort of a happy hour for everyone to come meet up and hang out. And then what was it, about 3 or 4 months ago, we started a Colorado Springs chapter. So that's Jesse. He's running that down there. So they're meeting up once a month. They meet on Thursdays down there. Yeah, I think their next one is on I think it's the 17th. I have to double check. But yeah, you can find all this libertyontherocks.org/chapters. We got links to your chapter, to Denver, NOCO. You can check all those out. And then I do have a list of all the former chapters. I've reached out to some of them to try and get them restarted. But we're a small grassroots organization. We don't have a lot of money. Most of our money comes entirely just from Patreon and cash donations. Get a little bit of Bitcoin here and there. So just kind of keeping it alive with the crowdfunding.
Nice, nice. So, it's awesome. Chapters all across the world. It seems so cool, to be able to find like-minded, liberty-minded individuals everywhere. But, if people watching this or seeing this online, why should they attend Liberty on the Rocks? Who's Liberty on the Rocks for? What would you say to somebody who's maybe considering going for the first time?
I'd say mostly it's just for free thinkers. It's for anyone that's open-minded, right? And sometimes people can be too open-minded. It's good to be skeptical about things and to always evaluate everything you're learning. But for the most part, we'll talk about almost anything. Anything I find that's interesting, sort of related to liberty, outside the box, whatever it is, we'll come talk about it. And sometimes that doesn't always go over well. Um, but we lived in such a limited system for so long, where your opinions were dictated to you by other people, that it's nice to be able to have, I'm going to take the left's word, a safe space to talk about these interesting ideas, right? And it's interesting just the way it shifted over time. Because again, last night we did a vaccine talk, and pretty much everyone is on the same page. The vaccines are probably not that great for you. Whereas you go back 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I think the majority would have been on the opposite side of that. And it's kind of cool that our whole community has kind of slowly migrated their opinions to being more open-minded to some things, or just accepting these new ideas. So really, if you're an intelligent person who likes to discuss things and isn't going to yell at someone for having opinions that aren't allowed, then it's for you. If you want approved opinions, then you probably wouldn't like us.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, it's neat to have ideas challenged and to get out of the house. I especially think nowadays in this post-COVID world, there's so many people who've kind of stay at home. They don't go out as much. Like you said, there's so many live streams and internet things they can do. It's kind of sad in some ways how much the social aspect of our society is hurting in this post-COVID world. But hopefully, it's making a comeback, and hopefully, there can be this new like renaissance of pro-liberty meetups and the liberty community growing stronger than ever because every day that goes by, the government delegitimizes itself even further. People are getting so fed up and tired of the system. And it's nice to say, hey, welcome to the club. Here's some people who maybe are skeptical of the government's role in society and are willing to accept or at least discuss different types of alternative ideas related to how we can just live our lives free of
Yep.
control of so much of this negative control.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, awesome, Josh. Really appreciate your time. Liberty on the Rocks is an amazing organization. Really excited with our Northern Colorado chapter. We're meeting the opposite Wednesdays. So Denver, like you said, for people in the Denver metro area, or even if you're further away from Denver, definitely consider going the first and third Wednesday of every month at the Independence Institute currently. If you happen to be up in the Northern Colorado area, we're doing the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month. So kind of those opposite weeks. It's pretty cool. And then when you add in Colorado Springs, I mean, Colorado has a Liberty meetup pretty much every single week
Yep.
throughout the year. I mean, the culture in the community is growing. I mean, it's just so exciting that there's this event. You can go to a Liberty event pretty much every single week if you wanted to.
Yeah, yeah, and I try to as much as I can. I try to make it up to yours as much as I can. I need to go down to Colorado Springs a bit more as well. But yeah, like you said, it's just great that we have all these options. We have all these things to choose from.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. Appreciate all the work you and your wife have done over the years to keep the flame of liberty burning, especially in Denver during some darker times. And like I'm just hoping we can continue to grow that community, grow the movement, and create a new culture of self-ownership, personal responsibility, of this idea of freedom as the greater good in our society. So, really appreciate you, Josh. Any final parting words here for the viewers?
Nope, just come check us out if you can. Come, as often as you can. We love to see you. You can check out all of our links, libertyontherocks.org /Denver specifically for the Denver chapter. And then you can just go to libertyontherocks.org, and then you can find the information for all the rest of the chapters if you want to check those out.
We'll appreciate it. Hope to see you down there soon, Josh, at the Independence Institute for the next meetup. And of course, anybody watching this, please come on by and say hi and see if it's a good community for you.
Brandon, thanks so much. Appreciate you. Thanks.
All right, take care.
You too.